I went, I do writing as well, like short story writing and writing, that's not script writing, but I had a project based on, I still do, based on Billy Tipton that I wrote with Nina Landy, and it was picked up by a studio, and then the studio kind of fell apart, and we took it back, and then it was almost financed several times. It's about Billy Tipton, life of Billy Tipton. I went to UCLA and decided, I was like, hey, why don't I try this directing thing and make that film? But I've done a variety of short films and short format stuff for hire as well, and I just finished a feature with Ernesto Ferranda called Sunset Stories. It's playing around the festivals now. So still work in film and passion projects, and then I teach as well.
What do you think?
And I produce movies. I'm working on, what kind of movies? All kinds of movies. I have a movie called Life of a King right now that's starring Cuba Gooding Jr. and it's about a guy who gets out of jail and goes to the inner city and teaches kids how to play chess and keeps them out of trouble. And it's pretty cool, actually. There's a movie called Weather Girl. There's a movie called 6 Month Rule, which is the most recent thing. And I've made about 10 shorts in later. But see, I've also worked on movies that I have no creative stake in, or I just get paid to work on the movie. So there's a lot of those out there.
I departed from narrative feature filmmaking and ended up going to art school and ended up becoming a visual artist. Actually, I still work a lot in video, primarily, really. And but it's not necessarily just like this. It's we were really trying to hit a lot of hit and transgress a lot of conventions with this film. That was part of its point in some way. So anyway, yeah, so I work in video and I make drawings and sculpture, and I have shows and show art, so that's what I do. It's kind of harsh, but we went to Sundance with this movie, and I had a really hard time at Sundance. I was really not prepared to leave my kind of protected, deep, awesome, as you can see, subculture, and move into this weird, the rest of the world.
I was just saying,
they're like, and so then if they would write anything, which mainly they wouldn't, they would write, and this movie has a woman with a beard in it. As if that had anything to do with anything about our movie. After we had just done so much, so much work about other things, about lighting and about performance and about editing and just so many formal things that we're trying to address about filmmaking.
Well, straight people see this movie. Will straight people see this movie?
Will straight people
see this movie? And we're like, we're not French, we see French films. I'm not a shark, I saw Jaws. But also it's true what Harry was saying, I was just saying in the workshop when we were at Sundance, our publicist was like, you've got a great write-up in Entertainment Weekly. God, it's great. I ran out and I spent fucking $3 on this thing. And I opened it up and it's a sidebar saying 2 movies at Sundance have women with facial hair.
For that reason, I just didn't want to talk about gender anymore. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I want to talk about other things for a while. And so I took a break, and I have been in front of the camera a little bit more recently. But I didn't want to be I didn't want to be, flattened out. I didn't want to be made into a one-dimensional,
I mean, the glass ceiling on narrative storytelling is really low for telling outside a story. There are a lot of rules that are just not spoken about how you're allowed to occupy. I think they're still there, and I think filmmakers like yourself are breaking them.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to get it financed. I mean, a lot of the reason why I haven't made another film like this is because I have, a couple scripts that I would love to have made, but I can't find the money.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed important for someone to be kind of outside as much as possible. So, and we kind of wrote it so that Silas would be the main person on screen all the time, and I would be on screen a little less so I could watch a little more. There's so much power in the editing and in the framing and the other things that you're doing, but there's so much power in the editing. But also, we had come from the stage, and so you could see Stanya and I just going a little too big, in our scenes.
Harry did a lot of theater, solo performance. I had a lot of stage time. I was in a band, so I had more jumping around, yelling time. But I was obsessed with acting as a kid. I used to read Uta Hagen, Respect for Acting, as a redneck in Vermont. And I would go on every audition for like community theaters. I was too young, but they let me audition. I couldn't pronounce words and whatever. Anyway, so when I got the chance to act, I took some acting lessons as an adult, which was also awkward because it was just a very straight class, so I played female roles. I remembered I would go to my friend Asia's house and just have her put a beret. For some reason I thought a beret made me look really, whenever I'm in doubt, I just put a beret on. And I can be any gender and any class that I want to be. And so we did do some lessons, and we took a class at City College and auditioned the roles. But we rehearsed a lot, and I did individual acting. And then we also had 2 people helping watch our rehearsals and give us feedback.
So that was, I thought, a very interesting element to it. So we shot a bunch. We shot for 30 days straight, almost 19-hour days. The thing is, so much of it was terrible that we couldn't use it. We stared at it for a good long time and decided and kind of rewrote the movie from there. And from there, decided about 10 more full shoot days that we shot about a year later. And made the movie. So one thing that we shot a lot of were Shy's POVs, because it felt like when you were watching the first movie that we made, it was hard to get inside, it was hard to feel it all the way, and it was hard to get inside the protagonist. It just wasn't happening, the connection. And so when we went back, we shot tons of POVs and edited those in, so that often when he looks, bam, cut on the look, and we're inside of his eyes for a
I
second.
have a hard time remembering is that movie took about a year and a half to edit. Is that right? A year, 2 years, 7 years? I don't know. A very long time. And it changed a lot in story, what from the beginning to the end.
It really did. We shot a bunch, and it was Steak had made a couple movies before, and our director of photography had made movies before, but Silas and I, we had never made even a short
Not a
video
short.
before.
We're
So
like,
we
shorts?
had never done anything.
Now I only
like
do
that.
shorts.
Something I really liked that I didn't remember was in there that really moved me this evening was when Silas is on the date with Isabel, and she's like, yeah, come off it, get real, and he says, and he tells that story about riding in this hot Catalina and everything's cool and you're riding in this big hot rod and then you get out of the car and you turn around and you realize this whole time you've been riding a beige Chevette. You get back in the car, you feel good again, and he says, you tell me, would you rather stay inside the car? And I was like, that's pretty much an awesome way of, discussing, certain ways of, being in body and being, sort of relating and not relating to certain
Endings.
things.
You talked about, films where the protagonist doesn't die. We did have an editor hijack our film, and they did re-edit. Somewhere there's a version of this film where Valentine dies. The end of the movie.
Just to show us how good it could be if somebody died.
And we were like, no, the little weirdo doesn't die in our film. That's the point.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of locations. That's one thing that I was watching. I was like, oh.
I was like, what the fuck were we thinking?
Footage cross country was Harry driving cross country. These cameras were little, just a fixed lens. You couldn't have any depth of field of anything, and you were just driving right with Max in one hand, just camera out the window. It was just very.
That scene after I get beat up and Silas discovers me and then we're running away and we kind of notice each other and smile at each other. We're like, oh, what's up? I love that. But whenever I see that, I remember shooting that down by the bay in San Francisco, and we actually had Brian's El Camino. And El Caminos are great because they're like, if you're gonna ever shoot anything, get a huge boat of a car because the shocks are like. Yeah, so we put the camera in the back of the El Camino, and then we ran alongside the El Camino, staring at the camera as if. So whenever I see that, I still feel the El Camino.
You just want an El Camino.
I do want it.
So.